Well, there's a lot to get into, so I'm not entirely sure if I'm gonna wait till the 5-minute mark. So let's just see what we can do. I'm sure there is a bad connection in there. Might be a little bit better right here. So, an overview of what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about the purpose of the multiple purposes of the Great Pyramid and its surrounding smaller pyramids. I'm gonna talk about Lilith and more details on what exactly has happened to her mind and what it has to do with the beings in suspended animation and how they're helping her out of it. So there's that connection. And I'm also going to talk about how there is one of these quote unquote gods, these chimeras, that has managed to retain his sense of divine nature, even in the midst of total blackness and evil in the black hole. And I'm going to get into who that is and things like that. And I'm glad to already see 5 people here. And if you could say hello, that would be great. So let's get into the pyramids. They were not built by the first civilization, the first one that ascended into the crystal garden, into the higher dimension. They were built by the ancestors of the first one. And remember when I said that there was a group of people that were left behind when this garden civilization ascended. And that group of people passed down stories over generations of this amazing civilization that had managed to pull themselves out of this realm. Hey guys. Hey, how's it going? I'm not doing good, Loyalty. Not at all. But I'm glad you shifted. So what happened is that when the garden was taken over by Osiris, they finally managed to communicate with the ancestors who were left here in this dimension of Earth. And when they did communicate them, they deceived the population here into thinking that they are the ancestors. But by that time, they've already transformed into the genetic monstrosities that they became. So they made contact with them, and they saw literally people with the body of a man and the head of like an animal, because that's the type of experiments that they were conducting. And so they thought that those were their ancestors, that's what they looked like, and that's who they were. So they just assumed that's who they were. So these basically fallen gods, right? They instructed these. The funny thing is that it's kind of what we think of as the Hebrews and the Israelites that actually built the pyramids and not the Egyptians, but I'm not going to get into that right now. And so they instructed them to build these machines. What did they do? And what did the machines do? Well, they had multiple purposes. Well, first of all, let's go back a little bit. I'm getting ahead of myself. We had 2 races that came. So we had Osiris with his reptilian race, and they were on the hunt for a DNA farm. They needed DNA. They needed basically to continue their own race. They needed to basically continue their own kingdoms and evolve and expand. Hey, Aphrodite, I'm glad you're here. Like in the movie Stargate, they bring slaves over from Sirius. Yeah, and so later on, like I said in one of the first videos, they also, Osiris did invite a mantis race as well, and it was primarily the mantis race that instructed the construction of the pyramids. And what it did was that it made this sort of, it's kind of like CERN a little bit. So it magnetized, it was also a very powerful magnet, and it bridged the two realms together to where they were virtually indistinguishable. So whenever the Great Pyramid was in full power, they were able to traverse dimensions at any given time. But even more so, if they wanted to switch the higher dimension off and invite only like a single individual to communicate with the gods, what they did was that they had a priest, and they would place him in sensory deprivation chamber inside the Great Pyramid, and he would be in there for a prolonged period of time, for hours, and he would have to be dressed immaculately. I saw, like, what I was seeing in my mind's eye was that they were like, whoever was helping him was touching every part of his body, making sure it was immaculate. He had a large ruby on his chest, the priest, and he had also an emerald on his head. And he was also wearing a headdress, and the headdress symbolized the specific deity that he wanted to communicate with. So let's just say if he wanted to speak with Anubis, he would put on the headdress emulating a jackal, and with the ruby and the emerald, he would go into the sensory deprivation chamber, and then the crystal on top of the pyramid, basically what it did, it's like the pyramid is a giant phone booth. Yeah, Bill. Yeah. Hey, Jack, how's it going? Loyalty. Hey. Yeah. So I don't like saying the word artificial, but I'm gonna have to use it because I don't know what else to use. Is that it artificially massively expanded your consciousness. So you were in the sensory deprivation for a long time, and then all of a sudden you would find yourself like observing the entire universe, for example. And that way you would communicate with the gods. And you know what the gods wanted? They wanted blood. Of course they did. They wanted blood, they wanted sacrifice, they wanted all kinds of things, because these were chimeras, these were genetic vermin that Osiris created. And they thought they were their ancestors, so they listened obediently to them. Obediently. They're like, well, the priest would come back and say, hey, that's what they want. That's what we got to give them. And so the other smaller pyramids were simply like reserve energy devices for the Great Pyramid. But the ultimate purpose is to bridge the worlds together. So it fused their dimension with ours. And when the black hole occurred, so what about Set? That's what I was about to just say. You just read my mind, Aphrodite. Well, Set is the one who created the black hole. He turned it into the total mess that it became. The crystal garden was already a mess. It was bleeding. The trees were bleeding. Crap, a train's coming. Lilith was stuck in her mind, Alice in Wonderland, babbling about incoherently, not knowing who she is. Should I wait for the train? Lower level entities ask for physical things, higher level have no need. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, absolutely. But even so, these are higher. Even in the total hellscape of the black hole they created, they're still in the seventh dimension. So you don't have to be high vibration to be highly evolved. You could be seventh dimensional, eighth dimensional, and still be very, very evil, because you could be clever, you could be a good magician, you could be great at technology. You know, it's not a black and white road. But you're right, though. And generally speaking, I think, Loyalty, I think you're absolutely right. In general, that is correct. So, yeah, Set got pissed at Osiris, and this is where things get extremely confusing. So he takes the 14 crystals, like I talked about in the other video, and throws them into a river of consciousness, which is the nebulous cloud. And remember, being in that higher dimension, things like the universe are immediately accessible. It's not like us here, we're just stuck, blah, 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 mumbling about. And so these sort of demonic hosts that have now taken over the crystals have basically destructed space-time within that nebula and created this massive black hole which boomeranged back to us. And it went inside the sun, because remember, the sun's a portal. And remember what I said, that in order to get to this other dimension, which is right below us, you have to go through the sun. So you have to boomerang, you have to make like a oval loop back onto itself. So what happened is that black hole entered the sun and it swallowed the garden. So now they're trapped in there. And what happened to the pyramid when it swallowed the garden? That crystal, the illuminated capstone, which was uniting the two dimensions and basically allowing for expansion of consciousness and integrating the universe with that structure, it burned out. The crystal died. They got trapped in the black hole, which is in the sun simultaneously below ground. I know that sounds weird, but think of it this way. Stop thinking of space as something out there somewhere. That's the only way to truly understand it. Or stop thinking of these beings and these dimensions as something out there somewhere far away. And if you could integrate that into your mind, it's easier to understand how it all has this like cohesive connection to itself. Especially if you were to look at like a dodecagram or like some of these complex shapes, you watch them and you see a complex cube and how it's all interlinked together into like a web, basically, and that's where we are. So a black hole somewhere in deep space affects our sun. The sun affects the other dimension in the earth, which ultimately affects our earth. All connected. All connected. No such thing as something not connected. Okay? How many dimensions are there? I think there are 16 or 17. But potentially there could be infinite. It's a really hard thing to quantify, because like between the fourth and fifth dimension, there's a million shades, or infinite shades basically, or between the third and fourth, so technically speaking, I would say there's infinite. But I made a video a while back about there being like 16, and I gotta find that. I'll have to dig it up from the thing. So loyalty, what are you saying here? Yes, they can be low vibrational, but clever and skilled in mental magic. Yeah, that's what happened to Lilith. Infinite dimensions, the creator keeps creating. Yep, you got it. So speaking of the dodecahedron, which is what Lilith was, which is the spell that Osiris put on Lilith, and that's why there's 11 stars. The Statue of Liberty is an 11-pointed star, because that's also a representation of Lilith being trapped inside the dodecahedron. And so that is a very complex spell, basically a hex that he placed over her mind. Remember, she's not in spirit, she's in the form of a body, a higher dimensional body, and this is literally her mind, and she's literally still very much alive. And that's where I'm going to get to my next point of who is trying to get her out of that. So remember, she was worshipped by these giants, right? who venerated her as like a mother goddess. And so when Osiris came, many of them escaped into this deep cavern, this chamber. And I spoke about them putting themselves in suspended animation. Basically, you can call it cryogenic sleep, whatever you want to call it. I don't know, it doesn't matter. But this is where things get super weird, so get ready. They place themselves, so remember I said some of them put themselves in that state so that they could leave their body, incarnate here on our realm to ensure the arrival of Horus. That's one aspect to it. One other aspect to it is that there is a large group of them that had to access all realities. So even though they were fairly evolved themselves, they needed to be out of body in the spirit form to access all reality, because they went in to access parallel dimensions of the garden, of the crystal garden, specifically parallel dimensions that did not fall under Osiris's hand. So this is linked to the different dimensions of Earth as well, the 3D. Okay? So, and they took imprints from those dimensions and they tried to overlap it over Lilith's mind. So, okay, a simple way to explain it is Osiris put a virus on Lilith. Let's say it's a computer virus. And then these people out of body, what they're trying to do is to get rid of the virus. And she has a tainted memory. She doesn't remember who or what she is. So they're going into parallel dimensions of the garden where nothing ever fell. They're trying to basically infuse her mind into those realities so that she could basically snap out of the spell. So they're taking quadrants from the infinite universe, piecing it together. And remember, a few videos ago, what did I talk about? I said whenever there's a contraction from the sun, a coronal mass ejection, and they have to turn on CERN to be the shock absorber of all that information coming from the black hole and from the higher dimensions. Remember I spoke about the infinite Earths that are contained within that. Those are those discarnate souls that are working their so-called magic to try to free Lilith from her spell. So I know this sounds super weird and complicated, but that's what I saw. So what? Okay. The sleepers, the sleepers. Maybe the land is the mother, and it doesn't separate from the umbilical cord from the baby until the baby gets pregnant itself. Then the worlds separate when the child is fertile. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. No, the land is definitely the mother, I think. There definitely is a connection there. Well, it also could be the case that in the crystal garden dimension, they literally are like, the form of a mother in their version of reality. But that's expressed here as the earth, okay? So they're living there. Like, what if Gaia, right, for example, is actually a lady? And it's the Mother Earth, but she's also in a higher realm, and she's also a woman. So it could be like the same sort of ideas. That's sort of like what you're getting at, Aphrodite. But I like that, though. Doesn't separate from the umbilical cord. So, yeah. So whenever CERN tries to catch all the bombardment of that information, inside the black hole, and then there's the replica garden too, you have these myriads of giants, discarnate giants they're like scientists. They're observing the entirety of reality as much as they can. They're trying to take segments of information to break this virus that Lilith has, and they're trying to basically override it. Like, I guess the computer virus analogy is the simplest way to put it. All right. All right, that was a bit much. I got to take a second break here. Sorry. I got to refresh my own brain here. I actually had a vision about a female energy who was running around making different people believe they were God. Interesting. And other people believed they were the devil. I wouldn't be the least bit shocked if that was in fact Lilith doing that. Since her mind is trapped in the fractal arcane realms, so she's probably witnessing plenty of devils in those realms. That's what Mark Braun, Satan, says. The North Pole is the holy hole vagina, and Aurora Borealis is the menstrual blood. Yeah. I mean, there's always like a macro element to, everything, right? So, and definitely, like, when I talked about the first 9/11 being, just that, it's being, like a penetration ritual, essentially, of the earth, essentially. So there's the macro element to that. And then the birth is also going to be from the earth. So I would have to agree, Aphrodite, that there's definitely a macro element to this. Which is, okay, there's supposed to be a giant black hole at the North Pole. I heard about that, yeah. I heard about the black hole at the North Pole. And from what I was seeing, by the way, just to clarify this up, that this Crystal Garden realm and Shambhala and the inner earth are not all the same places. They're all different places existing in different realities within the same space, which is where we are. But because the Crystal Garden is so freaking screwed up and dark, it's draining all the other ones, including our own. And basically, it's siphoning everything from everywhere else. So that one's it screwed everything up. It screwed it all up, basically. So, yeah. So what about Horus and all of this? What do you guys think about Crowley's stuff? Because I don't know what to think, honestly. Like, why he thinks this is necessarily just all allegory, especially being the magician that he was, and very much infused with the spirit realm, the way that is described, it really feels like it's just mental processes that are changing. And I'm not sure if, like, did he really just believe that? It can't be just that. And I absolutely believe that this is literal. I will probably till the day I die, even if nothing happens, because all of these parallel realities, even if they don't exist, I mean, they exist somewhere, because all imagination is reality, so they have to exist somewhere. A lot of it is long poem, The Smoky God, about the rivers to the North Pole and inner Earth. It's actually at the Bering Sea. It's called the Devil's Triangle. What's at the Bering Sea? Can you tell me more? Loyalty, please. That sounds really interesting. I never heard of that. All right, so what else was I going to talk about? I know I'm missing something here. Give me a second to clear up my thoughts. Yeah, so let's talk about Horus for a little bit, and some things that might be offensive to it might be offensive to people who are very staunchly Christian. So just as a warning. But Horus does not like his dad, right? At all. And so remember, even Aleister Crowley's explanation, he's talking about the Osiris archetype being that of a monotheistic god. Religion is his main theme, right? Osiris is a master magician that has hypnotized the whole world with these giant religions. Islam, his main one, of course, being Catholicism, because the main church at the Vatican looks like the head of a snake. Just look at it from above or from inside. It's the head of a snake, and he's the snake. So he is the main, basically, godhead of all of these religions. And Horus hates that a lot. He hates his father's idea of controlling man with religion. So when the Bible talks about persecution of Christians by the Antichrist, he's not going to persecute Christians because they're Christian. He's going to persecute Christians because he hates his dad, because you worship his father's religions. That's why. That's just my opinion. I'm sorry if you don't agree. If he sees you like worshiping his father's religion, he's going to hate you. And of course, there is an actual Christ too, and there is an element of that. That is true, but that's the main reason. If there is going to be persecution, which I unfortunately think there is, it'll be for that reason. He's going to rebel against daddy. This is an ancient, spoiled family of absolute brats. I'm sorry. It's just, I'm overcomplicating things with the dimension stuff, but in the simplest form, this is what it is. We have families, ruling families that want to rule entire planets and galaxies, and they're bickering over each other, is what I'm seeing here. It's weird that Egypt was likely in Philadelphia and DC. In Philadelphia and DC? Well, those places do have a lot of Egyptian-like obelisks and all sorts of stuff that has like... Actually, I just remembered when I was in DC, like in 2017, I think. Yeah, I saw a ton of Egyptian stuff over there, all over the place. It was weird, like a little bit too much, like. And ISIS was everywhere. They had like paintings of ISIS inside buildings and all sorts of stuff. So that's pretty interesting. But Philadelphia is a weird place too. I like how Matt from Quantum of Conscience talks about that impossible architecture that's in Philadelphia. I've seen those buildings, and I would have to agree, like some of that architecture is just ridiculous. And it really makes you wonder if parallel realities are crossing over much more than CERN is capable of deterring that from happening. What if we're all in a mix, in a blend of... We're in a blender of realities right now, It could be the case. The Book of Revelation talks about the great city seated on 7 hills, DC sets on. Is it really on 7 hills? Oh, wow. Because it's mostly kind of flat. It's kind of flat mostly. It's a very flat place for the most part. There might be some small hills here and there. But yeah, it's 2017, 2018, I was there, I believe, with a friend that I no longer talk to, Leon. All right. Anyone have any other questions? I'm trying to think of what else. Well, yeah, so I guess I forgot one thing to clarify is, so he didn't want to live through his father's kingdom. That's why Horus, the imposter, placed himself in suspended animation along with the regular giants, because he knew that his father was going to make him do this and make him do that and be like a thorn on his side. So instead of doing that, he cloaked himself in a human face. Remember, he's a falcon head, and went into this cavern along with all other giants and went into a deep sleep. And now those same giants are out of body, trying to resurrect him and incarnated here through places like CERN and other things that are ensuring his arrival. It's a weird dynamic we have going on. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. It's too weird. Oh, meteor hitting us tomorrow? There's a meteor hitting us tomorrow? There's always a meteor hitting us that never hits us, though. So is there another one? Well, what about it? Is it like a big meteor? Is it supposed to be like a catastrophe, or is it just like one of the regular meteors? Like, is it like the one in 2013? Like, what kind of meteor are we talking about here? Oh, that's right. There was one thing I wanted to talk about. That's right. Anubis. Anubis, okay? The one deity that has not been corrupted in this entire black hole realm. He has retained his divine presence. This guy is a champion, and you should clap for him because he is essentially the gatekeeper. And he's simply like more of an observer than he is anything else. And he is really saddened about what happened to the garden. And he is a noble soul, and he's not evil at all. And he's also responsible of one of the entities responsible of bringing Horus in as well, waking him up specifically, along with Kali, who's going to reignite the capstone to the pyramid, which will open the black hole onto the Earth. And you can imagine what will happen then. I'm just curious because I might not be in the same Earth. I might be near that Earth. I don't know where I am anymore. Honestly, I don't know. I'm just like Earth. Yeah, I guess, sure. All I know is that for some reason, all of this stuff is coming to me right now, and why, I don't know. It's just freaking overwhelming, though. It's really overwhelming to take in. And I don't even understand why I should know this. Or why this is all happening. I don't know. I don't get it. But no, I haven't heard of it. I guess that's a good thing, yeah. Got a lot of trains tonight. Sorry for the background noise. All right, I'm going to go pretty soon. Let me know if there's any other questions, please, because I'm sort of tired and a little bit out of ideas right now. I kind of went through the main points I wanted to talk about, though, mainly being the black hole and, Lilith, more details on her. So I went over that. And Jack, you got a question? I read a theory that the 2017 Vegas shooting opened an interdimensional portal, and that's why the last few years have been so weird. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, Vegas is just weird in general. I was just there, if you can recall. And that, speaking of pyramids, that freaking hotel really bothers me. And I stayed at that hotel before, the pyramid, many, many years ago, but I did. And the fact that the capstone on that black hotel period is the brightest light on Earth, if you didn't know that, is really making me wonder now. All the stuff I've been observing in my mind's eye. And then that light, what is it supposed to mean? Opening, right? Opening the gateway to the fallen garden. What else could it be? And then the pyramid is black, too. It's black. Like a black hole. They freaking put black tinted windows on this damn hotel and lit it up with the brightest light on Earth. It means something. I'm glad you brought up Vegas. I don't know about the shooting, sure. I know that that's a super questionable shooting. I can't talk about that on YouTube, unfortunately. But the circumstances of that event were questionable, and I'm not one to even question a lot of these shootings too. I'm really not. But that one, I'm like, what? This one weirdo up on a hotel like roof. It was all just strange to me. Things have been weird for me all my life, but 2001 sticks out because I felt the shift. Didn't know what it was. Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, 2001 was the main ritual, right? That was the key ritual. You know, putting the key in the slot. Get it? There's a symbolism there. And that's what that ritual was, to further down the line birth out of that. Vegas is built on vast underground caverns and tunnels and are filled with cement. Oh, I heard about that actually, Tina. Yeah, I am familiar with that actually, and I know. But I also know there's a lot of homeless people in those tunnels too. Or, yeah. And then you got Area 51 nearby, which I did get kind of close to around it. And there was just a ton of these weird trucks, like white trucks, that would just go deep into the mountains, and they would just keep going and going and going and going. Like they were supplying this place with like half of the earth. It was crazy. Like we were going from, so we went to Yellowstone, and then on the way back, we went through Great Basin National Park in Nevada. And so we drove through all of Nevada, and we came pretty close to Area 51. And just being near it was odd. Something felt off about the place, just being near it. Keck is interesting. I got to look over at Chaos Computer Frog. Yeah, that face always bothers me whenever I see it online, Aphrodite. It always really bothers me. I don't know why. Like, it just almost gives me like this like psychic jolt every time I see the Keck Frog. Like, I'm like, whoa. Not him again. It's an unpleasant feeling, actually. I'm friends with the shooter's brother. I interviewed him in a film I made. Really? Really? Can you send me that? I mean, did you make it? Did you upload the film? If you did, can you please send that to me? I would love to see that. So you have a personal connection to this, then, Jack. Wow, that's astonishing. Thanks for sharing. Other than that, I'm gonna go ahead and go, guys. Hopefully that will sum up the Crystal Garden forever now. And I'm just too overwhelmed to talk about it anymore. It's just too much. So thanks for coming on. It's on YouTube. I'll send it to you tomorrow. Thank you. I've flown near Area 51. Didn't think crop circles were real. You saw them yourself. Yeah. I think definitely some of them are absolutely real. All right. Thank you all for coming. I really appreciate everyone. Thank you, guys. Have a good one.